spectacular 3-hectare property overlooks Arthur's Seat on Victoria's Mornington Peninsula. Much of it is dedicated to an expansive garden featuring all kinds of Australian natives that are planted in drifts, swathes, terraces, pretty much everywhere. So what grabs you about Australian plants?
Well, I like the fact that you've got flower and colour throughout the whole year. It doesn't matter what season it is, there's always something happening.
And it's lots of foliage and different colours of leaves and that type of thing too?
Yeah, a lot of different textures, and the great thing is there's a plant to fit every situation.
Glenn Yearsley and his family have been working on this garden for about 40 years.
If you can imagine, it was actually 40 acres of pine tree forest right through here. So my folks came in and terraced it up and logged down the pines, and now we've formed into a beautiful, beautiful garden.
Well, that is a boomer of a tree.
Yeah, so this guy would be around about 40 years old. I think my mother planted this one. And yeah, this is what it turns into from a tiny little tube stock.
Oh, lovely. But the big thing is challenging under any gum tree. How do you get things to grow like
Absolutely.
this?
Yeah, it's always going to be dry under a gum, and you've got to deal with a lot of leaf litter and limbs dropping down. So it's important to use plants that have a bit of body to them, not sitting flat to the ground. That way the leaves and the limbs can actually fall down through it and the plant gets to stay up and above. A good example of that is this guy here. This is Scaevola styrata, and it's a magnificent little ground cover, handle incredibly dry areas, and then flowers throughout the year with this little mauve flower, but particularly during spring and summer, so a really tough one.
And another one that can cope with the really tough conditions under a gum tree is the Veronica, the speedwell.
Yeah, it almost looks like a prostrate eucalypt. When I first saw it, I thought it was. Had to go over and tear off a leaf and have a sniff, and then realised it wasn't, but absolutely magnificent plant.
Glenn, this is a good bit of landscaping. It really does show the different forms of Australian plants.
Yeah, and the textures coming through it, and the colours. So, yeah, we're using some beautiful rounded habited plants here. This is Lomandra littlecon, which is a beautiful lush green foliage. It never browns off. And in behind there, we've got Leptospermum scaparium nanum rubidum. So it's a big name, but a beautiful small plant.
A tea tree, basically?
Yeah, it's basically a dwarf red tea tree. A beautiful dark red burgundy foliage. And when it's out in flower, you can see a few of them here. It's a beautiful blood red coloured flower, and that covers the entire shrub.
And what a good contrast, the lime green and the mauve.
The dark
or the
foliage.
burgundy, yeah.
This is a dwarf Lomandra. It has a beautiful soft cascading green habit and always stays nice and silver, doesn't brown off ever.
And will that grow, this one will grow in clay soil?
Yeah, really heavy clay soils all the way down to beach sand as well. So,
what is a good tip when you come to be planting Australian native plants?
I think working your way from the higher levels and then building yourself down to the lower ground covers is a good starting point. Here you can see we've used Darwinia homeranthoides. This is a beautiful layering sort of plant with a really Japanesey sort of feel. And it looks like snow's lightly dappled all over the foliage.
Yeah, the actual branches are sort of horizontal, aren't they?
Yeah, beautiful layering sort of texture.
Now this one, people often grow it because it's a dwarfed form of the Western Australian flowering gum.
Exactly. So it's one of the grafted varieties. This one's called Baby Orange. It'll be in a blaze of orange flowers come summertime. A lot of people don't realise, but it's very important to come in and cut the old flowers off when they're starting to look tired. That way the plant doesn't put all its energy into creating these big, heavy nuts.
Because the nuts are really big, aren't they? And they just hang down and probably force the branches to break.
Exactly. So it's a good idea to cut the weight out of there before they mature.
Yeah. And this one over here, people who grow this can often say, when can they prune it? Because it's always in flower.
Well, that's the thing. Allergene huglii. It's one of the native hibiscus, and this guy does flower throughout the entire year. What we encourage people to do is actually cut off these long stems quite a way down, put them in a vase in the house, and they'll get to open up by the window and you get to enjoy it. And the other brilliant thing about this one, Jane, is they're edible.
What?
Yeah. So you can actually use these petals, put them in your salad, creates a beautiful bit of colour, and they've got a nice floral sort of taste to it. It's a wonderful plant.
I didn't know that. And the big thing is that you're keeping it nice and compact.
Yeah, from the get-go, keep that pruning up.
Yeah, and isn't that the same with all Australian plants, though? They really do need a good prune to start off.
It is true. What you normally see in nature is a native animal will come by and they'll just delicately eat the soft, juicy tips of the plant. These are nice and soft and easy to digest, so that's naturally how the plants would be getting tip pruning. What that does then is actually takes away the apex dominance. So all the reserve buds in behind each one of these leaves then become apex dominant, and they reach out. And what that does is create more solar panels. The more solar panels the plant has, the more power it'll imbibe from the sun, the faster it will grow, and the more flowers you'll receive. All my gardens here survive purely on rainfall. We don't water a thing ever, even from the get-go when we plant it. We just make sure it's around the right time of year, around Easter time. Great rain. The myth about plants not growing through winter, it's not true in Australia. They'll grow all the way through winter and settle in. And then come summertime, they're established enough to hold their own.
Native plants really are Aussie battlers. They're tough and versatile, and Glenn has used them to full advantage in his beautiful garden by choosing the right plant for the right spot.
We're finding more hybridised forms, more compact, more garden variety style. I think they're the way of the future.